when you're redeeming points, does it matter what it costs you to acquire the points? So your acquisition costs, whatever it costs you to get your points, is that important when we go to make redemptions?
So my first off the top of my head thought is, of course not. It shouldn't matter whether you got 100,000 points from a, sign up bonus or 100,000 points because there was a sale on points. Either way, you've got these points in your account. And so when you're going to redeem them, it shouldn't matter how much you paid for them, right?
But it has to, doesn't it? I mean, come on, if you paid a cent a point for your points, of course it matters how much you paid for them because you gave up $1,000. You better darn well get more than $1,000 worth of value out of those 100,000 points, right?
Yeah, this is a topic I feel like I'm the most conflicted about of all the topics we have on today's show, because yeah, I mean, let me give you an example where the cost of buying points absolutely matters. And I don't think anyone could argue against this. If you go to book an IHG hotel stay and you see that it would be cheaper, and this is a real example because it happens all the time, you see it would be cheaper to buy the points to book this hotel rather than paying cash for the hotel, then of course the acquisition cost, the cost of buying the hotels matters. Buying the hotel points matters because you want to buy, you're only going to do it if the cost of buying them is less than the hotel stay you would have paid for.
Yeah, I agree. And so this brings me back again to that whole concept of the points, the freeness of the points and the redemption side of it. Because, when you're saying that redeeming the points, 100,000 points, let's say that those were ultimate rewards points, your 100,000 points, right? And so when you redeem them here for this IHG hotel, in my mind, you are paying $1,000. I mean, let's say you were doing it, you earn most of your points on a cash back ultimate rewards card. Chase is certainly telling you that you've earned cash back, even though they award it in the form of ultimate rewards points. And so you've essentially decided to redeem $1,000 worth of cash for 100,000 IHG points. I think I look at it as you're buying the points all the time when you transfer them. And then, yes, of course, it matters what it cost you because it cost you the $1,000 you could have had with that 100,000 points. No?
Well, boy, when you start talking about transferring points, I think that's sort of complicating the question here. Let's talk more about
from a bonus, from a welcome bonus.
Just saying whether let's take these two examples. Let's say Aeroplan miles.
Okay.
You bought them on sale when they were, let's say, a penny each, just to make the math easy in case we get into math, or you signed up for 100,000 point credit card offer. Now, when you're going to redeem the points, does it matter how much you paid? You have 100,000 points either way.
Yeah, but I mean, well, it matters in the sense that I don't want to trade $1,000 for something that's worth less than $1,000, right? I mean, I don't because
but you've already done it. I mean, you've already made the trade
for the 100,000 points.
Let's say it was last year.
Yeah, I've already made the trade for the 100,000 points, but that doesn't mean that I should use them willy-nilly without considering how much I paid for them, because it will have been a very poor decision to have bought them if I'm going to redeem them for less than what I paid. No.
Well, that's a question worth asking, I think. But it's also, what if Aeroplan miles had just devalued in the meantime? So you made a bad purchase. Do you just hold on to these useless miles then forever because you can't get more value than what you paid? That seems like a really bad decision, right?
Yes. I mean, like if you're sure you're never going to get more value than whatever you paid for it. But then I still don't know as though do you really think it doesn't matter how you got them? Explain to me. I can't even understand where you're coming from on that. Like, of course it matters how much you paid. You're going to consider that when you consider how much value you're getting when you redeem. No.
Let's say you, let's talk about cash.
Okay.
When you go to redeem cash, meaning buy something, do you worry about how you got that cash? Whether you won $1 million in the lottery or you earned $1 million from your hard-earned, a business that you've worked on for years?
Yeah.
Does that really matter?
No, yeah, well, I mean, I do think about it. In fact, my wife often explains that to my son when, he wants another toy or something. She'll often say, how daddy's working. And so he can't play sometimes. That's so that we can buy stuff. And that's a trade that we make. And so, that's why we can't buy unlimited things because he doesn't work unlimited hours or whatever the case may be. However, that conversation plays out. Yeah, I do think about what I've traded away in terms of what I've given up to get that money. You don't?
I don't think that's
No?
a logical way of thinking. Like,
Okay.
you have this much money in the bank.
Uh-huh.
And so if you're going to buy something, deciding whether or not to buy it based on how that money got into the bank seems like a strange way of thinking to me.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying. But I mean, I do think of like I've definitely thought of things before, like small things in terms of like, okay, well, how many hours of my life did that cost me? What did I trade away for it? And is it worth that? I mean, I don't think about that day to day when I go to the grocery store or when I'm, buying a new iPad or whatever. Maybe an iPad is a good example where I'll be like, okay, did I really want to trade this much of, whatever I put in? Is this worth that trade to me, whatever it costs me to earn that? I do think about that, I think. And I think that is valuable to think about sometimes because it can be very easy if you don't think about what it costs you to earn the money or the points, then I think it can be easy to make very poor decisions and say, well, whatever, I've got the money in the bank, so I can go ahead and buy that Lamborghini, or, I've got all the money sitting there. It doesn't matter what it costs me to get it. I can go ahead and waste it on A or B. I think it is important to consider the origin or the cost.
So I can understand if you're talking about sort of the cost of replacing that money if you need it for other things.
Getting it initially, huh?
But you already have this money. Let's say it's more money than you need for daily living and everything. You're trying to decide whether to buy this fancy new car. Is it really going to matter to you? Should it matter to you? I'd say not. How that money got in how that excess money is in your bank account. You don't need. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I
and I'm not saying you should buy the car.
Disagree.
I'm just saying I don't think it should matter how it got there.
How it got there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
But
so let's say you're right.
Okay. But now that I've argued that point, I sit on a completely opposite side with some of my miles, which is with my American Airlines miles. Mm-hmm. I took advantage of a great deal last year to buy over 1 million miles for less than half a cent each. And so when I go to redeem those miles, I don't worry much about the award, the value of the award, which I do with most other airline miles. Like normally I'll look for like, well, is this a good deal for my miles? But with American Airlines, it's like, well, if I'm getting better than, if I'm getting even around 1 cent per mile, which is not usually something I'd be willing to do with most of my miles, that's great because I paid less than half a cent for those miles. And so I do think about it with that case. So that's why this sort of this subtopic of our main event is most challenging for me, because I have this one built-in intuition that says it shouldn't matter at all how you got the miles. On the other hand, I absolutely behave as if it does matter.
Well, I guess that's where I'm confused, because I look at that and that's a very good example to me of course it matters how much it costs you to get, because that's how you're going to decide what is a good redemption. The fact that those miles cost you less than half a cent each is what is going to help you decide, okay, well, is 1 cent per mile a good redemption? Yes, I paid half of that. And so that's a great redemption in this case. It's going to cost me, the miles to pay for this flight are going to cost me less than the cash to buy the flight that I would otherwise buy. I don't know. I think that to me, that is something you should be thinking about when you're redeeming your miles, no matter how you got them.
But at the same time, let's say someone had given me 150,000 American Airlines miles just for free. There's no reason.
No acquisition cost.
I had no acquisition cost. I would probably treat those miles like I do all my other miles, which is to say, I'm going to be looking for good value redemptions where, I could usually get 1.5 cents or better from these miles. but there's something mentally for me because I bought them at such a low rate. I feel like that allowed me to, that like I pre-bought travel, and I don't have to worry about it being much more than
An
half a
ideal
cent. But
redemption.
yeah,
But are we not saying the same thing to some extent here? So like how you got them matters, right? If you got them for
well,
free, so to speak, like it didn't cost you
right.
anything to get them, then you are, well, I don't know. I think that's interesting that you would say that you would look for even higher value if it didn't cost you anything, and you'll accept lower value if you had paid for it.
Right.
That's a little weird.
It's nonsensical, right?
Yeah, right.
But that's the way I've been behaving. That normally when I get miles for free, let's call it free when you sign up for a credit card bonus, even though there is some cost involved and there's some work involved, but let's just call that free. I do worry about the redemption value I'm getting of my points. And this one case is an exception. I think it has to do with partly with how many I have. Mm-hmm. So here's where it is. If I had only bought 100,000 or 200,000 miles, then I would be aware of, if I use those miles on suboptimal redemptions, if I'm only getting 1 cent per point value, I'd be aware that that means when it comes time to book that Qatar Q Suites flight to South Africa for only 75,000 American Airlines miles, I might not have those miles to spend and get that incredible redemption. And so that would be really unfortunate. Whereas having like well over 1 million, it's not something I worry about.
Well, so what came to mind when you were talking about this, when you're talking about the free points, and you mentioned the sign up bonus, and I think for me, the thing that I think of that I think is even feels freer is referral points. Like, so because those really didn't cost me. There was no opportunity there that I gave up necessarily. If somebody was going to sign up for a card and they used my link, I didn't really give anything up to get those points, right? And so I actually feel like I tend to, and I earn a bunch of those from American Express cards. So I feel like I tend to be willing to accept less value for my membership rewards points than I accept for a currency that's harder to earn, because there are so many of those points that I've earned essentially for free that didn't cost me anything. However, I do think about the fact that I can redeem those points for 1.1 cent each through the Schwab card, or 1 cent each with a Amex business checking account if you got the business platinum, because I do have the business platinum. My wife has the Schwab platinum. So I do think about, okay, I am willing to accept suboptimal value, but not less than 1.1 cent each, because if it was going to be less than that, I'd just cash them out and buy the travel, like we've said. So, so I think in that case, I do again think about how I got the points and how I redeemed them. If they were points that I earned from spending, from buying gift cards at Staples, then I'm much more careful with those ultimate rewards points, because they cost me time of my life to go pick them up, whatever my liquidation costs might be in terms of liquidating those. So I do absolutely think about what those cost me before I redeem them. Whereas I think less about that with membership rewards points, because a bunch of my points have come from referrals. And so they didn't cost me anything to earn.
So I'll assert, I don't think it's sort of a correct way of thinking to worry about how you got them, but how you got them is very related to how easily you're going to get more of them. And as long as that holds true, I think it's a logical way of proceeding. Meaning, I also will freely spend membership rewards points towards less value redemptions than I would Chase Ultimate Rewards, because I find they're so easy to replenish. Like there's very little downside to spending them down, because replenishing them is easy. Yeah. So I'm not going to run out. And I think that's a key consideration, that if you're gonna run out of a currency, especially if it has certain very high value rewards that are possible, then you need to worry about how you're spending them because of the opportunity costs. Like, oh, I could have booked this incredible award, or that. But when you have a virtually unlimited supply because they're easy to keep getting, or because you have millions of them already, then worrying about that trade-off isn't really that important, because you could probably do both. You could probably redeem for a medium value redemption and also that incredible redemption that you can get later.
Okay, so we agree on some things, but I'm going to have to agree to disagree on others, because I think thinking about what it costs you to get something is important. Whatever it is you're working for in life, I think that when you get it, I don't think that you should only be thinking about replenishing. I think you should be thinking about what you put in order to get it. So I'm going to agree to disagree with you on that. I see your point. I understand the point you're making, and in some ways, my behavior reflects the points that you're making. But I don't know. It gets into the complex psychology. Does the free matter? And what is this about the joy of free? Because here I am trying to sap all of the joy out of this game by telling you nothing is free. You gave something up to get it. It's going to cost you this much. I'm taking all the joy out of the game, aren't I?
Yeah, you sure are. Thanks a lot, Nick.